Grant Haber with us tonight, ladies and gentlemen, from American Innovations. Very serious topic matter. Improvised explosive devices, the threat, not just to a small nation like Sri Lanka, but to you and I and our neighborhoods throughout America and our offices and around the country. This is a huge, huge issue. If you would, Mr. Haber, can you explain to us what an improvised explosive device is?
It's an explosive that's intended to inflict a lot of harm.
No,
Very
exactly.
simply.
It's very simple, yes. But for those of us following along, is it made out of metal? Is it a box? What exactly? How does someone recognize an improvised explosive device?
IEDs can be manufactured in many different forms. The key to understanding is that you have your bomb making materials, and you have your bomb makers. There's detection capabilities that focus on invisible residues, which is trace detection, similar to what you see in the swab sampling for secondary screening. And then there's bulk material identification, where you're analyzing visible samples of an unknown material to determine if explosive materials are present or explosive precursors.
When people think of IEDs, they're thinking of our American soldiers who and other places around the world. We think of those devices being planted inside the soil, and whether it's Vietnam or whatever war it is, triggering those particular uh, devices while walking atop them. Is that the normal IED, or are there other forms of IEDs that people should be concerned about as well?
Well, the most common are roadside bombs, suicide vests, or vehicle borne IEDs.
hmm Now, why should we be concerned? This is a third world issue. These are bombs that are, you know, guys who studied chemistry maybe here in the U.S. and went back home to their countries, and with the few resources they have available to them, are able to create these particular devices. Why should Americans be concerned at all with the IED? No one's planning those things on our roads, right?
Um, to the 1970 Madison, Wisconsin University bombing, or the 1993 World Trade Center bombing, or the 1995.
People honor of being present to watch that destruction firsthand. If you could tell us exactly what tools were being used and destruction throughout those particular areas.
This is an ongoing investigation. What's important to understand is that three churches and three hotels were attacked simultaneously. And this coordinated attack killed hundreds of people and wounded many more. This attack can happen anywhere, can be replicated anywhere. So the best thing for us to understand is that our best defense against terrorism is a very strong offense.
Now, you have an article called Mitigating the Effects of Terrorist Attacks. And are we governments that are afraid to identify publicly terrorist attacks first and foremost? And if that's the case, how can we be vigilant and the solution against homemade devices being used to create uh, war situations?
We need to be more aware of our surroundings. When we're out in public, we shouldn't have our heads buried in our phones. We need to understand what's going around. If we see something that looks out of the ordinary, we need to say something. And we need to do a much better job proactively with regard to combating terrorism around the world. A lot of attacks that take place are planned and training and coordinated from other countries other than here. and then that knowledge gets imported back, and that information and propaganda is spread on the internet, and people learn how to replicate and coordinate attacks.
Well, I got to ask you here in terms of, I mean, you can go to YouTube or you can go to Google or you can download how to put these contraptions together of mass destruction. Um, is it right for that information to be publicly accessible? Should we have the government intervene and say that type of information is off limits and censored? You shouldn't have access to that.
That information doesn't belong in the public domain.
Hmm. So, what would be the best way of getting that out of the public domain per se? I mean, how do you stop millions of Americans and people around the world from sharing how to put together a pipe bomb or things of that particular nature?
Well, just like how things are censored now for political gains, there has to be algorithms and ways of targeting this kind of information and bringing it to the attention of the appropriate authorities so they could take action and investigate and one, take it offline, and then two, see the sources of the information.
Now, I want to ask you also here, in the sense of just the whole the whole idea of buying bomb making materials. I mean, when clerk, I mean, you took some verb to go in there and ask for the pornographic stuff. You know, you normally wouldn't do that. How does someone buy bomb making stuff? I mean, where do you go to do this stuff?
There's a lot of ordinary materials that are out there. We need to understand our greatest asset in the war and terrorism is people. And
Mm-hmm.
if we can educate uh, police and first responders, as well as the civilian populace, on things that they should be aware of, not how to make IEDs,
Mm-hmm.
but basic things that they should be aware of. See something, say something. Um,
Yeah. I
we
mean,
all have to play
should
a
we be
part.
concerned? I mean, because this gets into the area of economics and free markets. Should we be concerned about the guy that goes in there and buys a thousand bags of fertilizer? Maybe he's a contractor. You know what I'm saying? How do you know that this guy is someone that should be on the watch list?
There's been some grassroots training in this regard, and these are things that are anomalies. If someone comes in and they're in this line of work and they purchase stuff on a regular basis, um, or if it's someone that came in and they've never seen them before, or it's someone that they know and they just purchased an out of the ordinary amount of materials. The other thing that's important to understand when you talk about fertilizers, there's actually some fertilizers that simply can't be used to make IEDs.
Really?
So we need to do a better job getting those materials out and then taking away or reducing the supply or better controlling the distribution of the alternative fertilizers that we do know for a fact are being used to make homemade explosives for use in improvised explosive devices as their main charges.
We were told that the ISIS machine had been torn down virtually, and it is in the centralized focus of being in the Middle East. But we have a lot of individual satellite groups that are out there, and as well, you have factions that are supported inside of temples around the country. Um, are there reasons why this government should take a bit more a more frontal pursuit of going into those particular temples and basically finding out if those individuals are attempting to maliciously attack our nation? I mean, it's seemingly a pattern that the largest number of terrorist activities are taking place as a result of the radicalization of individuals in Muslim or Islamic sects. Should our government be a little bit more vigilant?
We're doing a good job. We can always do a better job. We need to establish trust. With trust comes enhanced support, and we need to recognize that the Muslims, they come from other countries, a lot of them,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of those countries are dealing with these IEDs on a daily basis. There's been millions and millions of people displaced from explosives violence. And if we can do a better job fighting terrorism down to its roots in countries like Afghanistan and Iraq and Somalia and Libya and you name it, we can start to reverse the world's worst refugee crisis. We can start to gain the support of the Muslim populace and making a difference where results can be quantifiable and irrefutable. It will make it a lot easier for us to gain the support of the Muslim population within U.S. borders and other uh, friendly nations to have a broader sense in the United States and our allies on the forefront of terrorism.
We are talking tonight with the creator of American Innovations Incorporated out of New York. Grant Haber is with us tonight. Um, in terms of being more proactive, per se, um, there are lots of fears going around right now. And as well, there are concerns about how financially strong we must be in order to afford preventative measures. I got to ask you, is it time for companies to begin investing in cameras to take a look at who's coming in and out of their buildings? Is it time for us to find other products, maybe explosive detectors and things of that particular nature that might mitigate some of the potential loss of life and property that would come with a IED exposure?
A terrorist only has to be right once. We have to be right 100% of the time.
Well said.
We require a lot of different tools to enhance safety. What we need to understand at the core of terrorism, you have bomb making materials, you have bomb maker support network. By targeting the materials, you can not only reduce the supply to the enemies before they reach the factories and become lethal weapons, but you can concurrently reduce the bomb maker support networks, which will make it harder for them to mass produce their most lethal weapons and then deliver them to their intended targets.
Is there a place per se? Now, it screams out loud to most um, lone wolves when it comes to the paradigm of public safety to head towards the local public school. I mean, there's not going to be a cop there. There's not going to be teachers who are armed. This is the show moment for a psychopath. But is there something that puts off individuals that like to use IEDs? Is there something that individuals can begin doing in preparation for such an attack? What are they looking for that makes a space attractive to them?
Places of public gathering, large congregations of people. Um, it's There's a lot of targets out there. It's unfortunate. This is why, as I said before, we need a lot of tools in the toolbox. And that's not just technology, it's people, it's good intelligence, it's actionable intelligence, and it's proactive initiatives that are very, very aggressive throughout the world where terrorism is breeding and planning and preparing and training to attack
Hmm.
free world.
Now, you say large congregations. Does your organization, American Innovation, spend time talking with churches, synagogues, and other institutions of refuge and worship about how to best protect themselves from the threats? I mean, Sri Lanka was churches and hotels. Um, do you work with those particular nonprofit organizations to prepare for such a strike?
We've helped churches and synagogues and many other organizations and nonprofits. Um, we've educated, we've supplied them with technologies. Um, it's a multi-layered approach,
Mm-hmm.
and it starts with basic awareness.
Mm-hmm. For those who are concerned, um, trash cans are a big attractive spot often because it's just quick dump and go. No one really pays much of attention to a trash can. And they're right in front of buildings and things of that particular nature where there are congregants. How can someone best protect their area and their places of worship where there are large receptacles?
American Innovation supplies multi levels of protection via bomb resistant trash cans. We can also supply trash cans that double as ramming bollards
Mm,
to provide a whole nother level of security from the threat of someone potentially driving a vehicle through a front doorway filled with explosives.
wow. I never thought of that. Never thought of that. In closing here, you started American Innovations. You're working with people. What are the one or two things that you would like to see America do right now to prepare itself best for a potential IED strike?
Again, it goes back to what I said earlier. I think our best defense is a strong offense. I'd like to see the integration of whole of government programs in countries like Afghanistan, for example, where we can leverage 300,000 soldiers and police officers and train them to target the most common bomb making materials. If by doing so, not only will we cut off enemy supply to their training camps and bomb making factories, but we'll be able to dismantle the bomb maker support networks. We then take that success story and that model and we implement it on a global level. That will make us safer here within US borders. Absolutely.
Listen, we really appreciate the fact that you come on tonight to talk with us about this very, very poignant situation in preparation for potential attacks against the U.S. By lone wolves as well as organized institutions of terrorism. For those of you following along at home, ladies and gentlemen, Grant Haber is the CEO of American Innovations. You can go to AmericanInnovations.com, AmericanInnovations.com. If you have a place of worship, if you have a business, or even just your ordinary place, you just might want to pick up the phone tomorrow and speak with Grant. Preparation is a whole lot better than recovery. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll be back with more of the best in earnest, honest, urban conservative talk. Thank you so much for being with us, Mr. Haber.